Hello friends and family, today's topic is a UFO. Let's begin. "You're not going to believe this, man," Marcus said, his eyes as wide as dinner plates as he slammed the door of his pickup truck. "What's got you all shook up?" his buddy Jake replied, taking a drag from his cigarette, the tip burning a fiery red in the dim light of the rural gas station. Marcus took a deep breath, trying to compose himself. "I just saw something out of this world." Jake raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing on his lips. "You mean like your ex-wife's new boyfriend's car?" Marcus ignored the joke, his voice urgent. "No, Jake, I'm serious. It was a UFO, as big as a football field and as quiet as a ghost." Jake's smirk faded, replaced by curiosity as he stubbed out his cigarette. "You're not messing with me?" Marcus shook his head. "It was hovering over that open field just past the old McAllister place. I had to pull over just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating." Jake leaned against the truck, his arms crossed. "So, what did it look like?" Marcus's eyes searched the night sky as if he could still see it. It was metallic, with lights that changed color, but not like headlights, more like a pulsing glow. He paused, searching for the right words. "And it just hovered there, not a sound. It was like it didn't even disturb the air." Jake's skepticism was giving way to intrigue. "What did you do?" "I just sat there," Marcus said, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. "I couldn't move. It's like I was frozen in time." Jake nodded slowly, his curiosity piqued. "And then what happened?" Marcus's gaze returned to Jake. "It just vanished, like it was never there. 1 minute, it was right in front of me. The next, it was gone." Jake's curiosity grew into a mix of skepticism and excitement. "Vanished, huh? Did you get a picture?" Marcus looked down at his shaking hands. "I tried, but my phone camera couldn't focus. It was like it was invisible to the lens." Jake leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "What if it's the government? Or maybe it's the start of an invasion?" Marcus swallowed hard, his heart racing at the thought. "I don't know, but we've got to tell someone." They both jumped into the truck and sped back towards the field, their headlights cutting through the darkness. The open field was now empty, the only sound, the crickets serenading the night. They parked at the side of the road, the tires crunching on the gravel, and got out. The night air was thick with anticipation. Jake pulled out his own phone, scanning the sky with the camera app open. "Maybe it'll show up on video," he suggested, his voice hopeful. Marcus nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of the alien craft. They waited in silence, the tension palpable, the only illumination the stars above and the distant glow of the gas station. As they stood there, a faint, buzzing sound grew louder, seemingly coming from every direction. Marcus's skin tingled, the hairs on his arms standing on end. Jake looked at him with a mix of fear and wonder. "Do you feel that?" Marcus nodded, his eyes never leaving the sky. "It's like static electricity, but everywhere." The buzz grew to a crescendo, and the very air around them seemed to vibrate. Suddenly, the earth beneath their feet began to tremble. The tremor grew stronger, the truck shaking violently. They stumbled away from the vehicle, staring in disbelief as the field before them began to distort, as if reality itself was bending to the will of something unseen. The tremors grew stronger, the buzzing now an unbearable drone in their ears. A blinding light erupted from the center of the field, casting long, eerie shadows across the landscape. Marcus and Jake shielded their eyes, squinting through the glow to witness something that defied all logic and reason. Above them, a massive object appeared to be descending, the light enveloping it like a cloak of pure energy. It was the UFO from Marcus's sighting, but it was now clear that it was not alone. The air grew charged with electricity, the smell of ozone strong in their nostrils. They could hear the faint sound of metal grinding against metal, a symphony of mechanical movements that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of the night. The light grew brighter still, and the tremors grew more intense, shaking the ground beneath their boots. Marcus grabbed Jake's arm, his voice strained. "We gotta get out of here, man." Jake nodded, his eyes never leaving the descent of the UFOs. "Yeah, let's go." They stumbled back towards the truck, the earth rumbling beneath them like an angry beast. Marcus's heart was hammering in his chest, adrenaline pumping through his veins. As they reached the pickup, the tremors grew so intense they could barely stand. The truck rocked back and forth, threatening to topple. Jake fumbled with the keys, dropping them once, twice, before finally getting the door open. They scrambled inside, the metal frame of the truck groaning in protest as it took their weight. Marcus threw the gear into drive and floored the gas pedal. The engine roared to life, the headlights bouncing wildly as they sped away from the scene. The light from the descending UFOs painted the interior of the truck a brilliant white, casting their panic-stricken faces into stark relief. The tremors grew so intense that it was all they could do to keep the truck on the narrow, winding road. Marcus's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his eyes darting between the road ahead and the rearview mirror, where the light grew ever larger. "We're not gonna outrun 'em, are we?" Jake yelled over the roar of the engine. Marcus's only response was a grim shake of his head as he focused on navigating the treacherous path. The buzzing was now a deafening roar, making it difficult to think. Jake held on tight, his eyes glued to the mirror as well, watching in horror as the UFOs grew closer, their lights piercing the night sky like spotlights from hell. They reached a sharp turn, and the truck skidded, the tires screeching in protest. Marcus corrected the course with a jerk, and the vehicle shot forward, narrowly avoiding a ditch. The light from the UFOs cast an eerie glow on the surrounding trees, their branches waving in the sudden intense windstorm that accompanied the craft's descent. Jake's eyes darted between the road ahead and the UFOs. "We're not going to make it," he shouted, his voice barely audible over the din. Marcus's eyes remained fixed on the road, his grip on the wheel tightening. "We have to," he replied, his voice a mix of determination and fear. The truck lurched and swayed as they took the turn, the tires screeching in protest. The UFOs grew larger in the mirror, their lights now casting shadows that danced on the dashboard. Marcus could feel the heat from the engines, or whatever propelled the crafts, seeping through the back window. He pushed the gas pedal harder, the engine responding with a roar. The truck leaped forward, the speedometer climbing. Jake's eyes were glued to the rearview mirror. "They're gaining on us." Marcus's heart was racing, his palms slick with sweat. "Hold on," he yelled, veering onto a dirt path that led into the dense forest. The truck's suspension protested as it bounced over rocks and potholes. Branches slapped against the side panels, sending a spray of dust and dirt into the air. The headlights danced crazily on the trees as the road grew more treacherous. The buzzing grew louder, vibrating their teeth, as if the UFOs were now right on their tail. Jake's eyes never left the mirror, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "They're still coming." Marcus's eyes narrowed in focus, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He knew this forest like the back of his hand, and he was counting on that to be their saving grace. "Hold on," he yelled again, as the truck took a sharp turn onto an even narrower, barely visible trail. The trees closed in around them, the branches reaching out like ghostly fingers trying to pull them back. The truck jolted and bounced, but Marcus never let up. On the gas, the UFOs emerged from the tree line, their lights piercing the darkness like the eyes of giant predators. Jake could see the metallic hulls now, sleek and otherworldly, a stark contrast to the earthy tones of the forest. "They're coming through!" he screamed, his voice cracking with terror. Marcus didn't look back, his eyes locked on the narrow path ahead. The truck lurched and bucked as it climbed the steep hill, the engine straining under the weight of their desperation. The gap between the trees grew wider, and for a brief moment, it seemed like they might just escape. But then the world was alight, with a blinding flash, and a deafening boom echoed through the forest. The truck was thrown into the air, flipping end over end as the ground beneath them exploded into a fiery inferno. Marcus had the fleeting thought that this was the end, that they had driven straight into a trap. They landed hard, the truck's metal frame groaning and twisting. The airbags deployed, and the smell of burnt rubber and hot metal filled the cabin. Marcus's head swam with stars, his ears ringing from the explosion. He struggled to free himself from the seatbelt, his vision blurry. Jake was slumped over, unconscious. Marcus reached out and gave his shoulder a shake. "Jake! Jake! Wake up!" There was no response. Panic set in as he realized the UFOs had not only followed them, but had also fired some kind of weapon. He had to get his friend to safety. He managed to unbuckle Jake's seatbelt and drag him out of the truck, which was now lying on its side. The forest around them was a wall of fire, the heat intense and the smoke choking. They had to get out before the flames reached them. Marcus stumbled, his legs wobbly beneath him, but he didn't dare stop. The light from the UFOs pierced the smoke, casting eerie shadows across the destruction. He could feel the ground tremble again, the buzzing growing louder. They had to be close, too close. With Jake slung over his shoulder, Marcus staggered through the flaming forest, his eyes watering from the acrid smoke. He tripped over a root, almost dropping his friend, but managed to right himself, pushing onward. His mind raced with thoughts of the UFOs, the government, and what could be happening in the wider world. But all that mattered now was getting Jake to safety. The light from the UFOs grew brighter, and the buzzing grew louder until it was a physical force pressing down on them. Marcus could feel it in his chest, a deep vibration that made his heart race even faster. The fire raged around them, the heat a living entity that threatened to consume them at any moment. Through the smoke, Marcus spotted a glimmer of water. It was the creek that ran through the forest, their only hope of escape. He stumbled towards it, the weight of Jake feeling heavier with each step. As he approached, the water looked like a mirage, a shimmering oasis in a world gone mad. He waded into the creek, the cold water a shock to his system. It washed over them, dousing the flaming embers that had started to latch onto their clothes. The buzzing grew more intense, the lights of the UFOs reflecting off the rippling surface, turning the creek into a river of liquid light. Marcus stumbled along the rocky bottom, fighting the current as it grew stronger. His breaths were ragged, his muscles screaming with the effort of carrying Jake. The water was up to his chest now, and he could feel the heat of the flaming forest closing in. The UFOs hovered at the edge of the clearing, their lights casting a strobe-like pattern through the smoke. The buzzing grew so intense, it felt like his skull was about to crack. Marcus ducked his head under the water, hoping to muffle the sound, but it was inescapable. It was in the air, in the water, in his very bones. Emerging from his temporary reprieve, Marcus spotted a small cave opening in the hillside upstream, partially obscured by the dense foliage. Summoning his last reserves of strength, he swam towards it, Jake's lifeless body still slung over his shoulder. The current grew stronger, but he was determined to reach the cave before the flames did. As the water rushed around them, the cave's mouth grew larger, offering a semblance of shelter from the inferno. Marcus stumbled onto the rocky shore, the buzzing in his ears now a constant maddening drone. He dragged Jake's body through the narrow opening, the coolness of the cave enveloping them like a blanket. The UFO lights flickered through the leaves and the smoke outside, painting the cave walls in an eerie disco of colors. They lay there, panting and coughing, as the water dripped from their clothes. Marcus rolled Jake onto his back and checked for a pulse. It was weak but steady. He'd live, for now. The cave was small, but it was enough to hide them from the prying eyes of whatever had just attacked them. He looked around, his eyes adjusting to the darkness. There was a faint glow from the moss on the walls, casting a green hue over everything. Thank you for your time. God bless.